It's Mr. Gray here. Thank you again for staying your kids for such a great week. We're doing a lot of work. I'm sure you've heard about the Chit Chat speeches this week and how it's going. The kids have been doing a fantastic job, but I know it sets off a lot of nerves for students, rightfully, to speak, but they have done a really nice job. Mr. Potwara came in one day this week to check out and actually get to comment on his point of view as a principal and how that might change the perspective of the students. So you could ask your kids how their speeches went, what Mr. Potwara said, anything they really liked that other students said, but they did a really good job not only speaking, but thinking through big problems. So I do have a few announcements this week. The first one is we are going on a field trip on Wednesday to the OCC Planetarium. We're very excited about it. I have a couple of things I want to tell you. The first is that it's great. It's a big help if your kids have any Santiago Hills spirit wear, if they can wear it. Or like we can just do like the color blue. That's an easy one. So if they can wear blue or wear Santiago Hills spirit wear, that just helps us, keep them all together. You have a bunch of chaperones going, so it shouldn't be a problem, but it is helpful if that happens. So spirit wear or the color blue. The second thing is our schedule is going to be slightly different that day. We're going to be gone from what would normally be our recess time through lunch. So we're still going to have recess and lunch. It's going to be just at slightly different times. So we're going to have a snack and some playtime a little bit earlier than we normally do, and then we're going to have lunch a little bit later than we normally do. So with that in mind, if you send your kids with a snack, you might want to give them a little bit extra to help get them through the day. And then they'll have lunch not till 1 o'clock that day, which is normally when we end lunch, but we're coming back from the field trip at that time. So we'll get back here at 1 o'clock, we'll eat lunch, the kids will play until the end of the day, but it should be a really fun time at the planetarium. And then the last thing I want to tell you about that is just as a reminder, if you haven't yet sent in a field trip donation, I would love to have you do that if you can. The field trips only happen because parents are incredibly kind and give donations to pay for it. As you can imagine, costs have gone up over the few years, particularly bus costs have gone up a lot. So the $45 that you send in would pay for your student to go for all the field trips this year. There's one this one to OCC Planetarium, and there's 2 on-site field trips that we pay for that are coming in January and March. And then there is a 4th one. We just added one, which will be in May, which is the UCI Chemistry Department is coming to give a demonstration of this. Supposed to be really fun at the end of the year. That one costs no money, so there's no additional charge. That $45 is still paying for the first 3 field trips. But if you haven't set that in, please do if you can. If you can only send in part of it, please do. If you can send part of it in now, part of it in later, any of those things are fine, but it really helps keep the field trips going, and it makes us more likely to continue them in the future. Another announcement that I have is we have a new person who's coming to our class. Concordia University has student teachers, and they're sending someone who's in the student teaching program, and I volunteered to have her in our class. Miss Toledo is coming on Thursday, and she'll be here Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday mornings for several weeks just to do 40 hours of observation. She isn't really doing any teaching. I'm still all the way in charge of the class, and I'm running all of the things. She's here mostly to observe and work with students, and then she'll be working with me on planning and things like that. But she will be in our classroom on those mornings and helping out with the kids. So starting next Thursday, you can definitely ask, who's Miss Toledo? How's it going? But she's already come and met with me, and she's great. She's very excited. But that will be another new thing happening in our classroom. Another announcement that I have is the PTA Reflections Contest. Your students got a flyer in the Thursday folder, and I also put a link in the updates page. But I know often students are really excited about that competition. We're going to take a little time in class on Friday afternoon, the day that you got this video, and work on it or like brainstorm some ideas. But then after that, it will be done on students' own time. But it's a really fun thing that kids have done before, and I'm sure you guys have heard about it from last year, but you can look for the updates page for more information. Finally, almost everyone has signed up for a parent-teacher conference. If you haven't yet, please do that. There's links on the updates page for you to do that, but that'll be great. I am looking forward to all those conferences and getting to see you. So they're a little bit later this year, and I'm sure so much to talk about with all your kids, but I'm very excited to have us all be able to sit together and talk just about your students and all the fantastic work they're doing. In reading next week, we're sticking with realistic fiction books. We're talking about a little more than this, but our two big focuses next week are going to be reading analytically and considering the effect of perspective on characters. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. Reading analytically is something the kids are going to hear quite a lot from me this year, and for many of your students, it means slowing down. A lot of your kids for a long time were such great readers, they zip through books, and books have become purely entertainment, and that is wonderful. I want all the kids to be entertained every time they read the book. We also have practice to do to get better at readers, and for some of your kids, that means slowing down a little bit and not zipping through everything, because we miss out on the really important details that can make books, even at a lower level than my reading level, amazing books. And so that's going to be really important, and we're going to kind of talk about that and look at these small details that I can't miss when I'm reading, if I'm reading at a high level of scholarship. That's one thing, and then we're also going to consider the perspective of characters. That's going to be really important. We're going to tie that a lot in with just being a human being on Earth and understanding that two people could be at the same event and see two totally different things. So we're going to study that in terms of characters and stories, but we're going to make some connections to that to the real world, which will be a great lesson for everyone and a great reminder. I'm going to start reading aloud a book called The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. This unit in realistic fiction is going to lead into this idea of theme. Like, really, we're studying how to identify themes, common themes, universal themes. And so The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane is not only a really fantastic book by Kate DiCamillo, but also has some very strong themes that come through. If you haven't read that, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Yes, it is a book for kids, but it's just a really beautiful, beautiful story. And I've read it many years in 5th grade and 6th grade, and I get something new out of it every time. In writing next week, we're looking at ways to raise the level of our narrative writing from what it has been before. You're going to hear this during conferences, but I'll give you a little bit of a preview. The goal in our class and every year is to be better than we were last year, not to be the same. No matter what we're doing, no matter what my grade is, my goal is to raise the level. And you can remember that from my talk at Back to School Night. But we're trying to raise our level in specific ways with our narrative writing, and the kids are going to try to incorporate a couple things next week into their personal narratives. The first is a flashback or a flash forward. So that is, as I'm writing my story, I might include something that happened before my actual moment that I'm writing about, or something that happened after the moment, and I'm picking something out that tries to bring out the meaning in the story. So you can imagine if I write a story about losing a dog, I might have a flashback to like the first time we got the dog. And because I'm trying to bring out this meaning in the story that we're all a family when we're all together. Like, being together is the most important part about being a family. So I lose my dog and I start to think about like how, it doesn't feel like a family anymore, and how people are getting upset. It's very uncomfortable. And I have this flashback to that first time we actually got the dog and how we all felt together. And that flashback helps bring out the meaning of the story. So we're trying that. Not every student is going to be ready for that or able to accomplish it at that level, but that's what we're trying to do to kind of infuse a deeper meaning into our narratives, and that helps lift the level from what we've done in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade now into 5th and 6th and beyond. We're also going to look at some endings for stories. Ending stories is always really difficult. It's hard to do in a way that's not like cheesy or just kind of ends the story suddenly. So we're going to look at some endings that students have written in previous years, and then they're going to kind of brainstorm some ideas and then actually practice writing multiple endings for their stories. And I think at the end of next week, they're going to actually start publishing their first narrative that they turn in. Over the next few weeks, we'll write a second story. And then at the end of that time, I think we'll be at the beginning of November possibly, but I will be sending out an invitation for a writing celebration where I'm inviting parents to come and get to hear these stories that are so wonderful. So I can't invite you too far in advance because the schedule changes, but as soon as I am pretty sure about the date, I will send that invitation to you, and it will be a certain time during the school day where I'll invite you to come and hear the great stories. In math, the kids will work on a couple things next week. First, we're going to work on Continental Mathematics League. I know the kids did that a little bit last year. We'll probably do it a little bit different than how it went last year, but I have more of a self-paced version where the kids can go at different speeds if they want, but we're really using that to work on strategies for problem solving. Oftentimes when students of any mathematical ability, even in APPES classes, when they encounter a problem that they don't know the formula for, they get a little lost. And so we're not only practicing difficult problems or problems that they've seen before but are in a new way, we're trying to practice problems where I run into something and I go, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I need to have some strategies for tackling that problem. So we talked about drawing a picture, which is an incredibly useful strategy, and we're also going to go over trial and error with some good examples for that. And then as we go on throughout the year, there will be more strategies for solving these specific problems. Also, we'll go over some either like equations or structures to help you solve certain kinds of problems. And then as we get further through the year, we'll actually take the Continental Mathematics League tests. So the first one, I think, is later on in October. I don't have that fully ready yet, but I'll give the kids a little time ahead to advance. So we're going to be jumping back and forth. We were just talking about volume, then we're doing some Continental Mathematics League. At the end of this week, we're starting our next unit, which is about operations and algebraic thinking, and we'll review order of operations. And you can imagine that's kind of what we're doing throughout the year. We'll do some unit work, and then we'll do some Continental Mathematics League and some other work. We'll do some projects, and we'll kind of jump back and forth, but that's what's happening next week in math. In social studies, we're starting our next unit, which is all about early explorers that we're going from Europe to the Americas, the New World. And we're really going to talk about how we think about these explorers, not simply as just people who are on a boat, but actually as kind of like startup businesses. And kings and queens and whole countries would invest in these explorers expecting a return. So they weren't simply exploring just to see places. They were trying to go find resources and riches that would not only enrich themselves, but the country that paid them. So that's kind of just a different way to think about it, but we're going to look specifically at Christopher Columbus, and we'll talk about whether King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, like why they chose Columbus and not someone else, or why they invested in him at all at the beginning. So we'll start that process. That'll take a couple weeks, but we're going to look at some research and some documents from that time, some things that were actually said by the people involved, and the kids will have to kind of form an argument and justify why they should or should not have supported Columbus as we go. That'll be really fun. In science, the kids will continue doing the work of looking at the properties of different materials to help build goods. So we talked about building a backpack last week. This week we'll talk about building a couple other things and also a backpack, and talk about how these different materials might affect the building of it. The kids are also going to take an assessment for science. Next week, it's short. We're going to preview some of the things on Tuesday, and then they'll actually take the assessment on Friday. In language, the kids are going to do their next vocabulary round, so they'll be looking at some vocabulary words and their definitions and have to do a little bit of practice. We've gone through a few weeks of language now. We did a vocabulary week, a grammar week, and a spelling week. This next week is a vocabulary week, and once we get through that round of 3 one more time, they'll have like a assessment at the end. So we'll do vocabulary number 2, grammar number 2, and spelling number 2, and then I'll put all those ideas together in an assessment that will go into their language grade, in addition to the practice that we've been doing along the way. Next week's habit is a fantastic one for 5th graders and all humans, but it's a great one for us kind of figuring out how to deal with other people in our life, and it is to seek first to understand, then be understood. Another way of saying that is to listen first, then speak. So that is a really great lesson. It takes a lot of practice. We're using the real world hero example of Dr. Jim O'Connell, who is a doctor and for a few decades now has spent every Friday morning meeting with people who are homeless on the streets of Boston and just doing minor medical procedures and developing this great relationship with homeless people, and then using that relationship to try to make a difference in the world and get them more help that they need. So it's a great reflection, not only on this hero, but also on how to deal with people in our lives. And it'll go along closely with our habit from last week, which was thinking win-win. And so trying to listen first understand someone else's point of view, understand someone else's feelings before I speak is a really important thing. And then to confidently voice what I think based on that is really good. So that'll be our habit and our hero for the week. We're gonna have another fantastic week. I know the kids are excited about the planetarium visit, and I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about it when they come home on Wednesday. But we're also going with Mr. Colbert, Mr. Kelly's fifth graders, so it'll be a really exciting time on Wednesday. I hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.